I'm so excited today to be with all of you to talk about the latest tech craze, ChatGPT, and whether ChatGPT can be considered a co-author. ChatGPT is fun, but it's stirring a lot of concern and controversy regarding its academic purposes. And one of the things that I'm really interested in, and I'm super excited to talk about today, are whether concerns related to the use of AI and predictive language models such as ChatGPT, whether they're overblown, or do such technologies really transform the ethical landscape regarding how we understand authorship and scholarship? And so in this panel, we're going to get to at least start getting to the bottom of some of these issues. I'm delighted to have Dr. Gordon Hall and Professor Michael Flierl here to be talking with us today. Gordon's work is in ethics and political philosophy. His current research focuses primarily on the intersection of law, regulatory policy, and political theory, with particular emphasis on intellectual property, privacy, and AI. He's worked also on the history of philosophy, and he's the author of The Biopolitics of Intellectual Property and Hobbes and the Making of Early Modern. And we have as our OSU panelist, Michael Flierl, who is an associate professor of student learning librarian at OSU Libraries. Michael's research interests include information literacy, student-centered learning, and learning environments, and AI. And Michael's recently explored the dual-use nature of advanced foundational AI systems, presenting it on this subject to a number of OSU organizations, and is really taking the leadership on thinking through some of these issues. And we're so excited to have you here today. And so just to let everybody know the overall structure of the panel, Gordon, who I should say is also the professor of philosophy and the director of the Center for Professional and Applied Ethics at UNC Charlotte, is going to get us started and really sort of start thinking about the framing related to the ethics of authorship and how these AI predictive models really potentially change how we should think about these things, or maybe they shouldn't. And then we're going to get Michael's expertise from the perspective of a librarian, how this technology should be incorporated, or whether it should be incorporated into academic scholarship. And then I have a few questions that I'm going to start us off with, but as always, at the bottom of your screen, there's also a Q&A function, and we should definitely get to a lot of questions from the audience today, because I'm sure there's lots of people that are curious that have specific issues that they want to talk about. So to no further ado, I would like to cede the floor to Gordon.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much. And it's a real treat to be here. I'm afraid I'm not going to solve anybody's issues with AI or authorship, but I have tried to think about it some, so I'll try to chart a way through it, or at least get us, some ways to think about it. So if I'm going to talk for 15 minutes, you need to see pretty pictures, not me. So here are some prettier pictures. The images that you'll see are generated by DALL-E, which is, so OpenAI is the company that makes ChatGPT, and then DALL-E is their image creation software. I'll show you the prompts I use. So this is an impressionistic painting representing what a chatbot does. And I'll say a little bit more about the DALL-E images at the end. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about what large language models do, just sort of basic intro for anybody who needs some catching up here, because I think it does matter quite a bit how they work. I'll point out that ChatGPT makes shockingly good text, talk a little bit about plagiarism, but I want to focus mainly on some of the weirder ethical issues, which stem from what gets called hallucination, which is the ability of this thing to generate text which has no basis in reality. So defamation, fabricated site list, and fabricated data. I'll talk a little bit about IP issues, and then talk about how I try to think about authorship. That's designed partly to segue into the questions of other folks. All right, so machine learning in general, this is a futuristic representation of what a chatbot does. So the sort of current models of AI are machine learning, which is to say they don't do what they were trying to do in the 60s. So back in the 60s, there was this idea that that thinking was a sort of series of logical structures, kind of algorithmic structures. So like Weizenbaum's ELIZA program, which was this very, very primitive sort of psychiatrist chatbot. It would say, "How are you today?" And you would say, "I'm feeling fine." And then sort of it goes through a list of words and it sees the word fine. It would say, "Why do you feel fine?" Or if you say, "I'm really pissed off at my mother," it would say, "Tell me more about your mother." But this was very sort of top-down structured, right? If then, if that, if then, if that. If you hit it with something that wasn't sort of in the logical structure, it wouldn't work. That sort of AI fell out of fashion. There have been a couple, three different ways of research. The current version probably got started in about 2012. I think that's the date I would put on it. And that's sort of when they solved the problem in image recognition at the University of Toronto. That's when one of the sort of early books about big data analytics came out. So 2012-ish, a combination of compute power and data processing aligned to enable these machine learning or deep learning algorithms. They basically, you feed them a ton of data, which they then ingest through this procedure, and they're able to predict or generate things that are sort of likely to come next. And this has a wide variety of uses. You should know that the data they ingest generally comes from the publicly available internet. So images, things like what people post on Flickr, Wikipedia, patent applications, those are publicly available, military texts, Reddit. So it's a odd, arguably not very representative amalgamation of human speech, which is in the so-called training data, which is then used to either you teach it or it teaches itself, sort of patterns that emerge at that and how it can then proceed based on those. The other sort of trick is that it's not at all clear what this thing actually does, right? It sort of generates a weighted neural network where, if data looks like this part's more prominent in the answer later down, and this sort of propagates through several different layers. No one can actually explain what that is. And so there's a whole problem in AI research about how do we know what it actually did? And that matters because it's a little hard to understand accountability in this context where we don't really know what's actually going on. But there will be ingested text and an output at the other side of it. So supervised machine learning, I think, is a lot easier to understand. So I want to start on that one. This is basically image recognition, where you train the model to correctly classify data. So that's just a Google image search for the word ball, but you feed it a ton of pictures of balls, all of which are labeled with ball, and then it produces a sort of geometrized or weighted understanding of what a ball looks like, such that ideally, when you show it another picture of a ball, it will get it right. There have been legions of problems with how the training data interacts with the output here. So there's a really famous paper in 2018 that talked about how it did not recognize Black women. It was really good at white men, the program they were testing, but the accuracy went down sort of with race. The Flickr images, there was a paper that showed that they basically recognized Western style images of household objects and did not recognize household objects that were in non-Western looking households. And the reason for this is that we don't know what it learns when it sees these balls, but we do know to say none of these balls have tennis rackets near them. If it saw a ball with a tennis racket, it might have trouble. Or conversely, if you showed it a whole bunch of tennis balls and tennis rackets, it might not understand a ball that does not have a tennis racket. So it's extremely sensitive to sort of the distribution and details within the training data. But again, this is, you give it a correct answer and you train the thing to recognize things that are examples of that answer. It needs lots and lots of examples not to get confused. This was a famous little experiment somebody did between chihuahuas and blueberry muffins, which turned out to look disturbingly similar. And they were able to sort of fool the image recognition program pretty easily, at least early on. But you can imagine that people could usually get it right, even if we have to look for a second. So enough images of blueberry muffins and chihuahuas, and it'll eventually be able to see how they're different. So unsupervised models, They basically figure out their own classifiers. So rather than telling it what a ball is, it figures out patterns in the text which it ingests. Large language models train on huge amounts of text, and they become able to predict what text is likely to come next given a particular input. So if I say good, it's going to have a sort of statistical prediction model that knows that the words day, morning, time, riddance, and frog could all in theory come next. Of those, frog is least likely, right? And so you're probably going to get an output that says good day or good morning. And of course, it'll be trained up to know more than just the preceding word, but it's going to have an input text and then generate something out of that. And so this is our DALL-E guy. Again, it was the same prompt. DALL-E and ChatGPT will generate multiple different responses to the same prompt. So this is not a deterministic model. This is a predictive, produce more output. It generates really good text. It is shocking. This is ChatGPT 3. This is the free one, not the one that you pay 20 bucks a month for. So I said, what's a good topic for an ethics panel on large language models? And about 2 seconds later, it says you can explore these different ethics topics, and it had a list of suggestions, which went on for several more lines after that. That's pretty good, right? I mean, it produced a list of things that we could plausibly talk about today. It did it. It would have done it instantly, except apparently they programmed it to make it look like it's thinking and typing on the output. Uh, but that's pretty good. So this is a really impressive bit of technology, and it generates text. It doesn't, if you teach students, you can sort of tell sometimes the plagiarisms or the ones that are from this, because it sounds like it doesn't make grammatical errors in the same way your students do. So it's not stylish text, but it's very functional text that will answer your questions, and it more often than not will do a pretty good job. That, of course, generates a plagiarism temptation. So I said, explain the importance of Henry VIII in a 5-paragraph essay written at an introductory college level. And about 2 seconds later, there we have our essay. So the humanities have been in a bit of an existential crisis about this, because all we know how to do is assign papers and have students write papers back. And it's extremely difficult to tell what's generated by the chatbot versus what's generated by the student. Earlier versions, at least, I'm not sure if it's still bad at this, are not very good at citing text directly. So if you say, you must include a quote from the reading we did, it'll generate either no quotes or bad quotes. So there are ways to tell them apart, but that's where we are now. It's already able to produce really good text. Its output is also based on the data it ingests, not on the real world. And I think that's super important. Whatever is in the sort of ChatGPT neural net or machine learning, whatever's in that algorithm, got to it from the internet. There was a date in which they did it, and then that is otherwise unrelated to the real world that we live in. And I think that generates a lot of the more complicated ethical issues. So the one I think that's arguably most interesting is called hallucination. And that's when its results don't line up with reality. So here we have a chatbot hallucinating in the style of 1960s hippie posters. Uh, it Because it's dependent upon this layer of text, it's going to find the answer to whatever question based upon whatever that layer of text says would sound plausible. If you've published things, you can look yourself up, for example, and it's going to just make stuff up, as I'll show you. But it also, sometimes this goes really wrong. So chatbots can defame people. These are 2 stories from, I guess, early April this year. In one of them, it just entirely fabricated a sexual harassment scandal and named a real law professor as the accused person. In the universe at large, it's plausible that there would be a sexual harassment scandal with a law professor. It knew the name of this law professor, it knew the words for sexual harassment, and so it spat out this defamatory content. It also told voters, this was in Australia, that their mayor was jailed for bribery. Not true. There was a bribery case, but he was actually the person who solved it. And so I haven't kept up with whether he actually sued, but he was threatening to sue OpenAI over this scandal. So it makes stuff up, right? And sometimes when you make stuff up about people, that's bad. It would be legally actionable defamation. They could fabricate citations. So I asked it some articles I wrote. I did not write any of those things. But what's interesting, so number one is not that far away from my book title, although it did not occur in that journal. I've written about Foucault. I've published in Philosophy of Social Criticism, but not either that paper about Foucault or about Foucault in Philosophy of Social Criticism. I categorically have not written about Kantian autonomy, although I do write about privacy. So if you sort of knew a little bit about me, that's not obviously wrong. Because again, it's hoovered up all the information about me on the web and is producing an answer that the person who writes the prompt, it sort of figures that's what they're looking for, right? So it's programmed to generate an answer that you would find plausible given the prompt. And then I've not written that article on Hobbes, but again, I have written on Hobbes. So part of what makes the hallucination very difficult, you saw this in defamation cases, it's not obviously wrong, right? It's not saying things that are completely absurd. And so that makes it difficult to know what to do. They could also, this came out last week, they could fabricate, or I guess 2 weeks ago, they could fabricate data. So this study is frightening. It has a data analysis tool, which I haven't played with, but it apparently runs Python. And so they told it to generate a data set which supported a particular preferred surgical outcome for keratoconus, which is the corneal disease, right? And so it generated a data set with p, less than 0.001 that showed that that was the preferred surgical outcome for this treatment. And if you didn't have like the actual stuff, you would never know. So it can make stuff up, and it's very, very good at it. And I think a lot of the issues around authorship are going to circulate around that topic. A couple of very quickly IP issues. So the training data gets ingested into it. That requires accessing training data and using it, probably copying it, and that probably implicates copyright law. I actually don't think that's going to be much of an issue, although I'm aware there's about 300 lawsuits around it, because there's earlier cases involving Google's thumbnail images where they said that was fair use because it was transformative of what the data was there for. So first I had a Flickr picture for you to look at. Now I have something that trains the AI model. Those are really, really different uses, and that level of difference often means it's okay. But that is a legal issue which is percolating. The other one, which I think is arguably more interesting, if the output is too close to what, say, an Andy Warhol picture would look like, then it's arguably the case that the output is going to violate copyright in some way. And so the papers I've read on this, they were able to generate really, really disturbingly close Harry Potter text. That's partly because the thing has ingested Harry Potter text, and you can sometimes get the models to dump back out exactly what they had ingested. But it's also the case that as they get better and better, if you think about, say, Dali, create a picture exactly in the style of Andy Warhol might have some sort of legitimate IP complaint about that, or his estate might. So again, I think these are also percolating in the background. So as I think I said, I'm a sort of Foucault person, which means that I'm actually not that interested in what it means to be an author in any sort of metaphysical sense. I think he's right that author is a word that we use to designate responsibility for something. So who has the property rights over it, or who is going to be held accountable for this product? And I think that's the right way to think about AI authorship. So here's 3 really quick examples. Should we require companies to have defamatory content in their AI models to take it out in some way? And this Eugene Volokh is a pretty significant First Amendment scholar. His paper basically said you can imagine something like the takedown notices on YouTube, where it says a defamatory thing about me. I tell them this, and they have to somehow wire in that it won't say that anymore. I don't know if that would work, but I think it's indicating at least that there's a regulatory problem here. Should journal authors be required to disclose AI composed text? A blog post I said yes, and that was basically just I was agreeing with what a number of journal editors had already done, but I think that's a good topic to talk about here. Um, my general thought is that we don't want to say that ChatGPT is an author because that deflects responsibility away from the people who use it. I'll be able to say more about that, but I don't want to sort of frame everything I'm going to say just yet. But if you want to know why that's interesting, with the authorship of this presentation, so a picture in the style of Van Gogh of a chatbot drinking a Budweiser. You'll notice, by the way, I cannot make it generate a corporate logo. I have tried and tried and tried. They have hardwired in some trademark stuff. But these images from DALL-E were things I told it to do. And so at least in this sort of worldview, I would advocate I'm the one who has responsibility for those. Because I'm the one who, and as a matter of law at this point, actually DALL-E cannot be an author from a copyright point of view. There's actually a court case on that, although it's, as everything, it's being appealed. But I think that's a good way to think about this. What do we do with a presentation like this that sort of avowedly uses AI? What should my role be in disclosing that fact to you, in questions of responsibility or attribution, and so forth? Okay, so that's my piece. I will end the share.
Thank you so much. Michael, do you want to sort of talk about this and how you've been thinking about this?
Sure, and many thanks to Gordon. That covered 90% of my normal spiel, so that was really well done. A few things I would say. One would be a quick story. I attended a conference in Vancouver recently. Beautiful city, by the way, never been. It was an AI conference, and a publisher was there with it was for JSTOR, if you're familiar. They had a journal, an article from JSTOR, and then right next to it was a chatbot querying the PDF of the article right then and there. So right now it's a little bit too expensive, I think, for them to roll it out widely. But if you've heard that ChatGPT has just lowered its prices, not for regular users, but for enterprise users. Likely that's going to go down. So I think, interestingly enough, they put some constraints on it, so it wouldn't hallucinate as much or confabulate now. That's the new term, if you're familiar. That's kind of the new computer science term for hallucinations. But the point being is they're really excited about it, and there's no discussion or question of, is this a good thing? What did the author think, etc. There's clearly what I got out of that presentation and about other things in the kind of scholarly communication world in relation to AI is there's only, functionally publishing is kind of an oligopoly. There's only a handful of major publishers out there, and they're all in competition with one another. And if one gets to be substantially better at incorporating foundational generative AI technology, they're probably going to get a leg up, or they might be perceived to be. So there's a lot of money at stake in how these companies, they're just assuming they're going to need to be incorporating it. There has not been a lot of discussion of if that's a good idea, how so, ethical implications of this, et cetera, et cetera. There's a really cool piece, I think it's by Messler, called like AI and Moloch. It's a game theory kind of piece, but really individuals compete, but ultimately they all lose out because they're doing something that's ultimately kind of suboptimal to the game. So that's a little story. Also, just from a practical standpoint, I think it's useful to know, like, we don't know what the hell is going to happen in the next 6 months, but what is clear is that models are getting smaller and smaller, meaning they're going to be cheaper and easier to deploy over the coming months and years. This technology could still flame out. It still could hit a cap. But I was saying that 6 months ago, and now ChatGPT 4.0 is multimodal and it has vision. So you can give it a PDF and it could see something in the PDF or you can give it an image. So on its website, there's like a bicycle example of someone needing help to fix a bike. They ingested a PDF of the bike manual and then a photo of the tools that they had available. And ChatGPT was able to find, oh, it's a hex wrench, second over from the left. So the functionality is getting improved continuously. The models are getting smaller and cheaper. There's new technology out there of AIs prompting other AIs. This is called AutoGen from Microsoft. So instead of a human input, it's an AI input. The output of one AI is the input for another AI. And you can see how that could kind of daisy chain over multiple AIs. Right now, they've kind of done it with like 3 or 4, but in the future, you can imagine dozens. And some recent studies that are interesting, something came out in the Chronicle recently that students use ChatGPT and other generative models about twice as often right now than faculty do. So students are using it, faculty aren't as much. Something from Salesforce, a survey came out from Salesforce just this past week, 14,000 employees across 12 different countries, 64% of employees pass off AI generated work as their own. And they admitted that on a survey, on an anonymous survey. So that's interesting too. So there's a lot of dynamics here. The technology is shifting, the landscape is shifting. I think it's interesting how it's being used. Or I'm sidestepping the ought question for what is the case here. So it's an incredibly dynamic area technologically. And I think that's part of why this is kind of qualitatively new. Like in some sense, this is like the internet, or people say it's like the computer, like the calculator, like the internet, modern computing, etc. But in another sense, it's not. Like there's a hazard for using metaphor here, because this is going to likely continue to evolve very quickly, and it's really difficult to keep up. It's really difficult. So even just notions of authorship are going to be complicated because of the dynamic nature of the technology. And I'll end on this note briefly. I think there's a lot of Gordon highlighted exceptionally well how all these current models are trained on publicly available data. The next data that they're looking at most likely would be the data, the information and data that we provide through our publications, through journals that are behind this walled garden of pay-to-play access. So there's questions of authorship, but there's also questions of, do we have a right to have our work being used to be trained on an AI? There's a whole host of questions regarding that in the future. And I think there's something to be said. We could look to the open access movement, open data movement, open educational resources. There's other movements or philosophical perspectives that have been brought to bear that have made a lasting impact on the publishing industry. So with that, I'll stop.
Thank you both for making something that is really dynamic and complicated, really digestible, and bringing up so many ethical issues beyond authorship. And so hopefully we'll get to some of those questions too. And just as a reminder to participants, if you see the icon at the bottom, there's a Q&A. Please start posting questions whenever you have them, and we'll start getting to them. But maybe we should just jump into some questions to get the ball rolling. And one question, from a research ethics perspective, one of the things that is a big issue that we think about a lot is just the issue of authorship. And I appreciate Gordon already starting to gesture at like the way we should be thinking about it. But I just want to invite both of you to just, try and flesh out, what does authorship in the context of academic publishing mean to you? Does ChatGPT and similar technologies pose a challenge to this conception? Or do you think that there's a way for our standard understanding of authorship to sort of respond to these new technologies? And maybe we'll start with Gordon and then we'll go to Michael.
Yeah, so I actually, aside from rejecting metaphysical definitions of authorship, I actually find this very difficult. That part of it is I'm in the humanities, and so for me, authorship means you sit by yourself in a room and you bang out the paper, right? And so that's a very different kind of exercise from some of the like, research teams that produce grant proposals and produce, the sort of multi-authored papers. The way I've tried to think about it, in a way this is going to deflect the question, but I think it's not wrong to think about this as being like a calculator. So if you're going to analyze data, there was a time when you had to do all that by hand, all the computation by hand, or like in the early 19th century, they would hire out basically women to sit there and do all the sort of hard work by hand, and then they would sort of amalgamate that. But then we invented this machine that could do all that for us, and then ideally that enabled us to do something else, which is do this sort of more creative part. If ChatGPT or sort of language models end up being good in the authorship sense, is going to have to be something like that, I think. So it's really good at generating boilerplate. This is either something, if I were a realtor, right, this would be the best tool ever, because house descriptors all sound the same online and they're just right. So it could spit it out pretty quickly. This means the internet is going to consist of, half AI generated text fairly soon, because everyone's going to discover that it spits out boilerplate really, really well. If you've written something and you want to compress it, it can sort of summarize your own text. So I think all of those are different ways that we can use it. I'm a little, but if it's going to start generating more than that, I mean, the current models don't generate the creative part very well yet. And so in a way, I can get away with deflecting this question because the tech won't quite do it. But I do think we're just going to have to end up at a academic consensus, and this may very well differ between different social and cultural groups on what we mean when we say author. And then there are going to be norms that emerge that establish what that means in that context. So a bunch of science journals said, if you're going to use it, you got to put down in the article very precisely what you use it for and how. These came out, I guess, about a year ago, these policies. I think they're on the right track, because I think that's better for encouraging research integrity on the part of PIs and first authors, because they're in the same way that any other research integrity issue, ultimately you want to encourage the people who are in charge of the operation to at least try to keep a lid on the research integrity. And you're not going to incentivize the language model to be more or less ethical in its writings. So given that dog doesn't hunt, you want to locate responsibility with people who ultimately sort of bring the final product out. That's not to say how exactly you do it, but I think that's the right direction to be doing it in.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to echo that. I think there's some also factors here we have to take into account. Currently, AI detection software is utterly unreliable. It's trivially easy to fool. To fool AI detection software. So we have to take that into account. Say you're a busy grad student, you have 3 papers due, you don't have as much time, and you can have ChatGPT or something else, Claude 2, Bard, Poe, create a good outline. Is that it's a slippery slope here. Is that unacceptable? What's the difference between that and talking to a friend, say a more advanced friend in the area you're looking to? That's another area. Another piece of this, and Gordon pointed this out too, is these are what's called black box models. We don't fully understand how they work, and it's possible that it's not even possible to understand them. At the end of the day, it's just kind of mathematical calculations. Its thought process is so qualitatively different from our own, we wouldn't be able to understand it. So alien. So, and we combine that with the fact that we don't know what data a lot of these foundational models are trained on. So then, for instance, the medical field's really concerned about this because there's a lot of historical data, for instance, African Americans receiving less pain medication than white patients, right? You train a model on decades worth of data and it appears objective, but there's a bias baked into the system. And so the model with this aura of objectivity is going to output biased recommendations. So we don't know what the data it's trained on. they're black box. We really generally don't know how they work. And so the notion of like it having a sense of authorship in anything is, I think, hugely troublesome to me, even just from an epistemic standpoint. So, yeah, so I mean, I think there's also you could look at military and autonomous weapons too. That's where a major concern with autonomous weapons. We want a human in the loop.
Well, so maybe, I mean, in some ways, the question of what is authorship, what I'm hearing from both of you is that it may not matter what like individuals think. It really is about cultural practices and sort of understandings as this sort of technology continues. That seems to be like what I'm getting from both of you. So I'm kind of wondering, I mean, the second sort of question, and you've sort of touched upon it in answering the first question, but maybe give me, if you have any other further thoughts on it, are these distinctive ethical challenges that come with this kind of technology? Is there something about the technology itself that appends our current practices or current understandings related to academic authorship in particular? So thinking a little bit, not thinking so much about students right now, but really thinking about academic authorship and publication. Or is this just like the computer, like the calculator, another new technology that makes salient old ethical challenges that have always been around, but it sort of sheds new light on some of these perennial issues that we're constantly trying to negotiate and figure out how to deal with? Maybe I'll start with Michael this time, and then Gordon, you could respond.
I would argue that this is a qualitatively different type of thing. It elicits qualitatively different ethical questions. Because let's say it's writing at a high school level right now, ChatGPT, like a basic, can provide kind of the basics. Say in 6 months to a year, what if it's, first or second year in university? Say in 2 years, 3 years, it's fourth year, Ivy League level. I mean, and we're not sure if AI detection is going to get better or worse. And also there's evidence to suggest, like research to suggest, that humans are typically bad at AI, detecting AI output in general, recipes, poetry, etc. So there's going to be a huge temptation to use it if it's really powerful and effective. At the same time, I use a lot of digital technologies in my life to improve my writing, to improve my own scholarship. What crosses the line for a performance enhancing drug for this? I don't know. In one sense, it's a technology, just like the transition to a keyboard and mouse makes me faster than writing out physically. But in another sense, it's also fundamentally different from the internet, from being a calculator, because it's coming at it stochastically. It's trained on a lot of data and you don't know where it's coming from, etc. So yes, I would argue there's something distinctive about this. And in the future, maybe there's some type of combination of approaches. Maybe it will become acceptable to use it to generate ideas to help you. I mean, I've written out the same lit review for 3 different papers, for instance. Is that really necessary? I don't know. Could my time as a researcher have been better spent focusing on other things? I mean, Claude 2 just came out, 2.1 came out, which is a model a lot of people haven't heard about that I would recommend checking out. But it can ingest, you can upload about 150,000 words worth of text now. So that's about, give or take 500 pages. That's like a book. That's, a dozen or so journal articles comfortably, maybe probably a lot more. So could you generate a lit review for that so that you can ideally be more creative potentially? What are the ethical implications of that? What are the risks? I think those are questions we'll need to tackle as this dynamic technology continues to evolve. And we don't know where it's going to evolve either, which is why I think there needs to be a discussion about foundational principles.
Yeah, that seems right to me, particularly that we're not going to know what the questions are necessarily in advance. And so the lit review question, it's like, well, the ChatGPT's lit reviews are terrible because it just makes up articles and then dumps it. But if there is a model that could do that well, then I don't know, if I summarize and kind of half remember 30 papers on something, is, if I read it through and kind of half remember them, is that better or worse than if ChatGPT does it? I think that's my impulse is to say it's worse, but that's not something I think I would be very good at debating yet. So I think we're going to get better at thinking about this. I also want to underscore the AI detection programs are a disaster. The false positive rate is should be enough to scare one away from using them. They'll accuse people of making up text that they just didn't make up and then proceed to miss the obviously made up text. And I don't know that I haven't read anything that convinces me that they're likely to get very good. So I don't think we can answer any of these questions by saying, "Oh yes, but in the future the AI detection software will be better," because I think that's probably it's comforting, but I don't know that it does any good. Um, I think what makes this different is that all the way back since Descartes, we have associated language use and consciousness, and we've used successful language use as the marker to distinguish the human on the one side and everything else on the other. And so, you could debate whether we want to include some species of animals into the sort of language side, but the sort of, human artifact distinction has been really, really well policed by language use as a marker. And so that distinction doesn't work anymore. And so what we've lost in the transition, and maybe this is the uniqueness of it, is we've lost one of our really, really deeply entrenched ways of knowing for sure whether it's an artifact or a person on the other end of it. And that has not been the case really for any other technology. This is the first thing that's really been good at language generation. So I think that's probably driving a lot of why this is hard, because if you have really complicated data analysis, obviously you use the computer to do it, right? Right, that's not hard to figure out. But if you have some pretty text, well, now we don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, can I just ask one follow-up? Because Michael, you mentioned performance enhancing drugs as sort of like, what is the threshold of like performance enhancing drugs? And I mean, it is sort of interesting to think about the academic setting, like, right? Like what is it? I mean, one of the sort of ways in which the analogy works is like we so far care a lot about catching people, like whether or not people are doing it, using it, right? Using the technology or not. But then I guess the question is like, well, why do we care? We care about performance enhancing drugs. I mean, this is another sort of ethical question, but one of the reasons we care about it is because of the competitive nature of the activity. And I mean, one of the things that I've heard so far from the two of you is just, maybe this is just a way to free up human academic scholarship to focus on the creative parts. Maybe there just won't be lit reviews anymore that are like sort of at the beginning of papers. Maybe papers will be shorter so people can actually read more things and creative things. But I guess the question is the, I mean, in some ways this is going back to authorship and what we care about, but why? Clearly we care in the educational setting, we care about detection because we want to ensure that students are learning. What is it that we should care about when it comes to detection of whether or not people are using this AI when it comes to academic scholarship? I don't know if either of you have any thoughts about that.
I'll say that the study that said you could fabricate the data set terrified me in a way that almost nothing prior to that did.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I care about the integrity of the research,
Right.
and the literature establishing the way that pharmaceutical companies manipulate data, manipulate publishing results, ghostwrite articles, apparently entire journals are ghostwritten here and there. So it's like, oh, good, another tool in that toolbox. That might be the single thing that immediately grabbed me the hardest in all of this, because it gets right at the core of research integrity. there is a massive financial incentive to do it, right? And it would be extremely hard to detect. And because when your stock valuation rises or falls, and whether P is less than 0.05 or 0.04 or whatever, then I mean, they're already tend to do that, right? There are already doctored images and published articles. So there's a whole lot of that, right? The stuff that Retraction Watch catches. So there's a whole lot of that. And I think what that tells me is, at least for me, what I care most about is the integrity of the output, that the research actually shows what it purports to show.
Dana, I'm going to go to my high horse for like a minute here. I think it's possible what is the case for I try to hammer this dual use foundational models. So Dana, you hit the nail on the head insofar as these are dual use. They could be used for ill. They could also revolutionize scholarly publishing and research. What if you could summarize or visualize? What if you can ingest 50 journal articles across a multitude of authors, and you can visualize different ideas morphing or changing over time in a way that might take months or years otherwise? I mean, there's whole slews of medical, I mean, the private sector is throwing money hand and fist over to the medical sector for using machine learning techniques. And they have for a while now, but it's ramping up too, to use machine learning. But there's incredible potential too to revolutionize. I mean, we might think of authorship fundamentally differently in 5 years because of this technology. What if in 10 years we're talking to our students, like, remember when we had to actually read a bunch of articles just before we even get started? I mean, there's even AIs now being focused on hypothesis generation, or how to create better experiments. So would that take away some of the authorship if the genuine research idea that like sparked an entire research project or an entire lab, if it was AI generated, but if it produced genuine insight or new knowledge, do we kind of care? Like, yes, it's competitive, but in another sense, it's not like baseball. It's a bad analogy because like it's much more higher stakes if we unearth new knowledge in the world. Also, I also think it's important. We don't have to accept the current status quo of dual use foundational models. You can have AI systems that are gray boxes or white boxes. There's a whole subfield in computer science called explainable AI that kind of caught on 10, 15 years ago. We can create new AI systems that meet our ethical requirements or are more transparent, reliable, and safe. So we don't have to be, I don't know, chained to the current systems. We can advocate ourselves. Say OSU can create our own that is more transparent, that is more accessible, that is more concerned with privacy, etc. And that does maintain some semblance of research integrity that we collectively advocate for. That is wholly within the realm of possibility. And I think it's important to recognize that, like, it seems like these big foundational models are it, and they are the only thing we can do, but there's a whole world of possibilities that we could advocate for.
Thank you. Yeah, Gordon.
Can I just start? I was maybe the way humanities guys say, I think that where we end up on these is the context is gonna matter a lot. So I don't care if real estate listings are generated by AI, an underpaid person, or the realtor. That I just really don't care. But there was an interesting paper about sort of the use of machine learning in radiology, and the authors are like, look, you can train pigeons. I did not know this. Apparently, pigeons can be very good at image recognition. And you can actually show that the pigeon can identify the tumor at the same level of accuracy as a radiologist. No one says we should replace radiologists with pigeons, right? And so then they use this intuition to say, well, maybe we, the sort of the technology stockholders who want us to replace radiologists with AI should think about those sorts of intuitions, because there are situations where that kind of human judgment matters to us. And so I think, yeah, so it feels like medicine, where issues of judgment are really, really important, or where people die if the authorship is fake. that's going to be a very different kind of answer from entertainment listings or even movie reviews or something like that. So I think, yeah, I think Michael's right in saying that we're opening up to a sort of pretty large field of questions, and that, yeah, we do want to sort of get in front of them because we can help shape where it goes. And that's going to depend entirely on different sort of subdisciplines.
There's a ton of questions from the audience, so I'm just going to close with one question that is just really following up the things that we've been talking about getting ahead of it. So this is just sort of the question of responsibilities on the part of journal responsibilities. So if ChatGPT and other technologies are used for research purposes, how should we think about attribution and authorship practices changing? Should journals be responsible for actually figuring out whether or not ChatGPT was used? If there isn't attribution that ChatGPT was used, does it make sense to call ChatGPT an author? Would that actually help with transparency and some of these sorts of regulatory issues? Maybe we'll start with Gordon and then we'll go to Michael.
Yeah, I think journals are going to have to set policy, or maybe ideally professional organizations to sort of that would cover a bunch of journals at once. I really, really want to resist calling ChatGPT an author or a language model an author, because an author can originate, at least the way we've always used the word, they can originate something and they can be a locus of responsibility. And it bothers me that I could, for example, tell ChatGPT to spit out, 500 defamatory letters a second, and it would do that. And then if we call it the author, somehow now I'm getting away from the responsibility and we're dumping it on the language model. So it's not that it's incoherent to call it an author, because, well, look, it's creative, it made up stuff, right? So it checks a number of the boxes there, but in terms of right, but we can't actually hold it accountable. And if accountability is still important to us for authorship, I would resist calling it an author for that reason. But I'm curious to see what Michael thinks about that too.
I agree. I think with the current state of AI detection and it likely not improving over time, I think the onus has to be on the author to be transparent about how they use the technology. I don't think it's fair to expect journals to do that legwork. Also, I don't think it's that difficult of a fix from the journal side in one sense, because you can just say, write in a paragraph, just like, external funding, funding paragraph, you get to say, this is how I use ChatGPT. And you can leave it to the author, to the editors, you can leave it to professional organizations to dictate what is and what is not acceptable. But I do think it's going to improve. There seems to be a lot strong evidence it will continue to improve. So again, I think we need to get out in front of it. Like, the time to make this decision is now, in a matter of months, not in a matter of years. We can't navel gaze about this, or else we'll be behind the 8 ball before we know it.
So there's a lot of questions from the audience. So I'm going to just start combining some questions. One follows nicely from this sort of journal editorial responsibilities to thinking about the university's responsibilities. So there are two questions. One is about, currently the university is thinking about putting processes in place for professors to address the use of ChatGPT for student work. Should same processes be in place? So should we think about this just as plagiarism? Should we think about this as something else? And another question that is related to sort of university policies is the technology is advancing quickly. Students and us, researchers will use it. Should we start offering training and best practices for using ChatGPT in our courses? And in our research mentoring of students? Maybe Michael, you could start, and Gordon, if you have any sort of
Sure. I think it's certainly different doing an original research project versus a student project to demonstrate learning or growth or what have you. I think those are different, but the same fundamental principle of transparency reins. I think the issue becomes when you try to pass off work that is not your own. That could be a friend, that could be someone you paid for. You can argue that ChatGPT is just a very cheap person you can hire to complete writing assignments for you.
Mhm.
I think eventually instructors are going to change assignments in such a way to ensure that they get to show a demonstration of student work and creativity rather than an AI. Although I think some instructors probably won't adapt and maybe just trust students. I don't know. But I think transparency is the bedrock foundational principle that translates across both instances. I would be concerned about best practices because, again, the technology is going to change. I think what's useful or what is really integral is understanding, and Gordon did a great job of this, is understanding the nature of generative AI systems. If you can understand that, then you can have an understanding of, oh, this is probabilistic. Oh, this is based on training data and garbage in, garbage out. Oh, this is a huge model that can't genuinely be comprehended by human minds in any way, any meaningful sense. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that would be my, although there are computer scientists who would argue that they think or they feel, I would argue that since they don't have a conception of the world or truth, they can't do those things. But I think having discussions about what it is, what the nature of it is, what the technology is, I think there's a lot of folks who are afraid of it, afraid to use it or to experiment. I think we need to really instruct faculty, students, staff, whomever, to at least understand the fundamental principles of the technology so that they can make informed decisions. I'd be concerned about best practices because in 2 months' time, used to be that you can give it a 4-digit times a 3-digit multiplication number, and it couldn't do it because it doesn't do the calculation. Now it pulls up a Python script and solves it. So it's a moving target. So I would avoid concepts of best practices. I would focus on education of the nature of the technology itself.
Yeah, I think I would generally second that. We don't. Yeah, I think most people don't know that much about it. They're either very excited about it or very afraid of it, one or the other. But there's all sorts of ways that you can discover to use it. So I teach an online summer class that involves, some sort of basic logic, and it's, you need a test bank with all these questions to identify fallacies, and those are a real pain to write, come up with. And I was like, oh, give me 15 questions that demonstrate the post hoc ergo propter hoc fallacy. Yep, there are there, and then of course you review them to make sure they're correct, but of course they were all correct. So I think they're really, or you could give students, ask it a question and then have them criticize the answer it produces. So I think there are all sorts of ways that people are learning how to use this. And then we need to teach students about it because they're going to be going into workplaces where it's in use. And I think we probably owe it to them that they have an understanding of what it is and what some better and worse uses of it are. My sense, because I work with some folks over in computer science, is that computer science is going to be one that subjects hit hardest and fastest because it can already generate code. And that used to be a quintessentially human skill. And people who were really, really good coders were pretty unusual. And it took, all this human patience of finding the missing closed bracket that sort of made the code work. Yeah, the language model is already kind of good at that, and it's going to be really, really good at it pretty soon. So we're going to be compelled to rethink what it is we want our students to emerge with. But yeah, I would second that transparency has to be one of the sort of core principles.
So some of the questions are more like points, but I think but I think that this is a related question. So Susan Hodgkins basically was, I think, asking whether or not, what are the ethical uses of it right now, right? And Gordon, you just mentioned an example where you used it to generate questions and you could fact check it and make sure that they're right. So she asked, can limiting the use of chatbots to topics that you know enough to fact check, but just don't have time to compose yourself, and then actually fact checking it, can that be an entirely ethical use of AI? And I guess one question to sort of more generalize that question is, let's say, if the core concern with authorship, at least, is accountability and responsibility. If we can actually be accountable and responsible for the generated text or language that is coming out of these tools, is that an ethical use of using these models right now?
I mean, I think it depends on the context. You're going to be tired of hearing me say this, but you know, if I'm writing one of these journal articles, then I probably should say I started with it. But I've, you know, gone through it. I'll take responsibility for what it says, but I did get some of this from ChatGPT. And I know that, you know, there's going to be edge cases where you say, well, how is this really that different from going on to Google Scholar or doing some sort of search, right? So I'm aware that there's a blurry line here that has to get the sort of general principle may not suffice to describe it very well. But I think it probably matters in what context you're doing that. If it's one where you're supposed to take responsibility for the outcome, then we probably are going to arrive at some sort of norm where we have to talk about our process. And then you probably should disclose that process. If it's one where there is no norm about the process and or you're not really taking ownership of the outcome, then I think is a different kind of question.
I agree. I think we just need to come, I think different disciplines, subdisciplines, journals, what have you, will have to come to some type of agreement. And I think it will need debate and discussion about what is an acceptable. I had a debate with a colleague about brainstorming. They said if they were teaching a course and a friend helped us, they said if ChatGPT helped them to brainstorm topic ideas, they would consider that an appropriate use. And they gave reasons. I thought this is comparable to having a discussion with a friend to come up with ideas. I think there's room for discussion and debate, but there needs to be some type of intersubjective agreement here between the parties. So for, you know, a discussion section, for a, you know, you're waxing poetic, you know, you give yourself some leeway and you want to wax poetic a little bit, and ChatGPT came up with that phrase that really sticks. I think as long as you're transparent, my moral intuition says that's not really a problem. But the question becomes, at what point do you stop? Can it write the intro? Can it write the lit review? You know, if it comes up with the idea, or if it was your friend that really inspired you, you know, do you have to say exactly what text you wrote? Is 20% sufficient? Is 30? Is 40? I don't know. If it could come up with the general idea, and if it has the capacity to write most of the text, you review it and change 10%. Is that your paper? I don't know. I think there might have to be maybe even just some arbitrary rules, but I think it will probably be discipline specific would be my guess, because humanities could be very different from a hard science, for instance, right? Humanities, I think, is probably a much trickier situation in particular.
So one question that came up is about the training models and the training data. And so let's say hypothetically that ChatGPT and these LLM models get access to academic documents that are currently behind a paywall like JSTOR. How do you foresee, what do you foresee? So the question is, what do you foresee happening based on its current quote unquote intelligence? And I mean, I guess it's like, this is sort of a question related to the distinction between artifact and like knowledge, I guess, that you know, thinking that Gordon was talking about. But how should we think about the intelligence of these of AI and this sort of processes that are generating these texts? Yeah.
So I don't think it's I don't think it's intelligent. I'm aware there are many smart people who think it is, but I think they're wrong in sort of obvious ways. I think probably two things here. One is if it ingested all of the stuff on JSTOR, its answers in fields like cultural studies and history would sound a lot better. Right. We would probably see, because it would know better what people say about those things, and it would do better than Reddit for, Egyptian history, and that would be fine, but that wouldn't change what it's doing, right? It still has this corpus of text, which is now better text. And certainly one way to improve the models is to either train them with a better text or to then tweak them with a subset of better text, right? So there's all these different ways you could try to improve them, and improve their performance, but it's still, the referentiality is still all internal to the text which it's ingested, at least on the current system. So they don't have, there's a really nice paper I read a few weeks ago about how referentiality might or might not work in this context, or how it might be grounded. And the answer is it's probably not, and there's not a really good way to think about how you could ground it given the current models. The paper came up with reinforcement learning with human feedback as a sort of tenuous connection. So that this is when, as part of training the model at some point, it spits out two answers to a question and a person says, this one's better than that one. And so then it sort of learns the kinds of answers we prefer, which is good, but I don't think that adds up to it being fundamentally different. Although, of course, it will work better if we give it the better initial data set. That's definitely one way to improve them.
Yeah, there's already Stanford has a biomedicine LLM that it's developing or has developed. So I think there's actually tremendous opportunity to give it really high quality data and information. That being said, Gordon hits the nail on the head here because it required, I mean, ChatGPT required a lot of human feedback, a lot of human man hours. There's been some reporting about how much OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT, paid workers in Nigeria to do this, $4 an hour or something like that. So it's, yes, it might make it better, but there still needs to be a lot of human feedback, RLHF, to make that worthwhile for humans, because it's really guessing. At the end of the day, it doesn't even have a conception of words. It uses tokens. When you hear token limits, it's really just like a couple of characters. So yes, it's probably going to make it better, but it would also require a lot of human hands-on work, grunt work, and also it's I also hesitate to say it has knowledge. Jeffrey Hinton in the New Yorker just said he saw a machine learning algorithm get frustrated. Like oh boy, he's the godfather of AI, a lot of respect, but I think that is hugely problematic to kind of anthropomorphize an AI in a number of different ways for a number of different reasons. So I'll stop there.
So
You could, sorry, of course it sounds frustrating because that is given a certain set of input. It is predictable that the language user will start to sound frustrated. So it's correctly predicting what it should sound like. But that doesn't mean it is frustrated.
There's some clarificatory questions from the audience about what exactly is going on that I think is useful to just get at. So one question is, are unpublished material that you input in ChatGPT automatically added to the training data set? If so, does this mean that material is published in some way? Anything to watch out for when inputting unpublished material?
So there's a setting in ChatGPT to say, don't use any of this data I give you to train the model. So you can sidestep that. Do you trust them is another question. I don't know. Third point is that you can, there's Llama, which is a publicly available for Meta, publicly available LLM from Meta. You can download it to your own device and you can play around with it, including, I believe it could intake PDFs. So you can do it locally on your own device, or you can click a setting within ChatGPT to do that. And there's also other models out there. Again, I would recommend Claude 2.1 from Anthropic. Read their terms of service. Kind of started from OpenAI folks who wanted a more ethical AI. So they might have a few more considerations, but I wouldn't consider it published if you would. So I would recommend against giving open ChatGPT or basically any chatbot any type of unpublished material.
And Michael, you said that models are getting smaller and cheaper. What do you mean by smaller? Smaller as in more specialized?
Oh, good question. Both more specialized, but also you'll hear like parameters. So like Llama or ChatGPT might have 70 billion parameters. That's really kind of just the number of knobs you can turn that might make a difference in how it reacts. So now there's like, say, 7 billion parameter models that are seemingly doing well on benchmarking as well on 70 billion parameter models. So what all this equates to is that means there's less compute required to create these models, to train these models, which means it's going to be substantially cheaper. So they're getting less computationally intensive, therefore they're getting cheaper, therefore it's a lot less resource intensive for the environment, for electricity, etc.
And the last sort of clarificatory question, but I think it's also related to one of the things that you've been sort of talking about is the importance of transparency. Not only the question isn't only about whether or not to use ChatGPT, but also what sorts of policies in place when it comes to publishing, about how to acknowledge the way in which it was used, and sort of really thinking through those things and really making that clear to the reader. And so one of the audience members was recently submitting a manuscript, or is about to a medical journal that basically has a policy related to AI tools when publishing. And her question is basically, are people disclosing the use of these tools in papers? Do we have any research about whether or not these policies are actually being heeded, and whether or not there's any sort of enforcement mechanism related to the policies that journals are bringing up?
I don't know of any. And in fact, I think all the incentives are to try to pass it through. So I've seen made up citations as a reviewer. I've seen that as an editor. It was pretty obvious, but my guess is if you're smart about it, you could probably get some through. Even creating citations, you can ask it to generate a DOI and make it look really good. So I have a whole list of ways to jailbreak it. If you're interested, email me. But
that's the conversations around research unethics.
That's the after panel. So yeah, I'm not aware of any research. Given how long it takes to do research and the timing of this, I'd feel a little surprised if there was anything. But yeah, the incentives are going to be to circumvent it. The question though does make a good point that we would consider the little like squiggly blue underlining or the squiggly red underlining not to be necessary to report. Maybe Grammarly is not necessary to report. So we're going to have to draw, I think Michael said this earlier, there's going to be some arbitrary lines. So why is this speed limit 30 here as opposed to 35? Well, because we had to pick something. And we're going to have to pick something on some of these questions about this is okay, that is not okay. Will we want to follow those policies? That's an entirely separate question. Yeah.
So maybe we have one more minute. So I just want to give both of you the sort of final word related to the big ethical questions that you think we're going to be grappling with related to ChatGPT in the next, few years. I know it's dynamic, but what are you worried about or excited about? I guess it could be both, either optimistic or pessimistic. What are you worried about or excited about related to the use of these large language models in academic publishing? And maybe Michael, will start with you, and Gordon, you could.
Sure. I think this could dramatically increase scientific inquiry. This could increase knowledge. This could make learning happen in more dynamic ways. This could transform entire disciplines. My concern is that it's going to be kind of more like social media algorithms, where for-profit companies use these powerful machines to modify our attention, to frack it. I think is a new thing I just read yesterday, which I liked, and to really drive profits. Health outcomes of teenage girls be damned. So there's tremendous. I don't know. I think if we really intentional, if we advocate for more open, transparent, safe AI systems, there could be tremendous good to come out of it. That's why they're dual use, but they need to be regulated. We need to be thoughtful and intentional, and we need to do that work like today. That would be my one takeaway. This is going to change probably a lot quicker than what people might think, or might want. So we need to come up with these principles. We need to get ahead of this, and it needs to start today. And I'll end on that.
We could almost just give Michael the last word, because I think that's entirely correct. So there was just this 20,000 word executive order about AI, and you sort of, okay, well, where does this come from, right? And so there's a really sort of suspicious corporate behavior here. So Sam Altman got caught basically advocating one thing publicly and then tried to work with EU regulators to weaken the very things he just advocated publicly. And so, a lot of the proposed regulations would make it really easy for 3 or 4 of the incumbent large companies to do AI, but very hard for anybody else to break into the market. So I think we're going to need to be both intentional and careful about which interests and what entities are influencing the policy, because a lot does, I think, hang on it, because this is potentially a really transformative technology, but we're going to have to be very careful about who's at the helm and how those changes happen.
Gordon, Michael, thank you so much. I learned so much about what the nature of the technology is, and some things to watch out for, and maybe some hacks to use. And I really appreciate you taking the time to really think about the foundational ethical issues that underlie some of these practices. And thanks everyone in the audience for joining us today. This is the last CARE panel of this series, and look forward to the Center for Ethics and Human Values website to see our spring agenda. All right. Have a good day, everybody.
Thanks, Dana.